Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Jody Dublin. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the Associate Director of Advising and Programs, Graduate and Professional School Lead at Beyond Barnard, and I'd like to welcome you to our program today, which is Standing Out as a Grad School Applicant, How to Prepare a Strong Application. So we're going to start out our evening with some introductions. I'll introduce all of our panelists, and then we'll go right into our questions. After that, there'll be some time for Q&A. So feel free, if you have questions, write them down, hold on to them. And yeah, when we're finished with our panelist portion, we'll go into the Q&As. All right. So first, I want to introduce Hillary Beggs. With a rich history, with a rich and diverse background spanning a nation's capital to Chicago's Magnificent Mile, Hillary Beggs is a seasoned professional with expertise in higher education, government, and corporate America. Her career has been a thrilling evolution, transitioning from event leadership to the realm of higher education, where she creates impactful and authentic experiences. She has previously held key event leadership positions at prestigious organizations such as the Library of Congress, the Magnificent Mile Association, and the University of Arizona. Today, as the Director of Admissions at the Joan B. Kroc School of Peace Studies, she is proud to empower changemakers worldwide. Hello, Hillary, and welcome. All right, so next we have Rowan Hepps-Keeney. Rowan Hepps-Keeney, they and them, is a non-binary educator and activist with a significant background as a trans advocate and public speaker. Rowan received a bachelor's degree from Barnard College, class of 2018, with a major in women's gender and sexuality studies and a self-created concentration in activist theater. During their time in undergrad, Rowan served as the president of the Gender Revolution and received several awards, including the inaugural annual Beyond Barnard Student Employee of the Year Award, LGBTQIA Mentor Award, Campbell Award, and served as a senior marshal and graduated with honors. Rowan moved to San Diego in 2018 and has since worked extensively in the fields of immigration advocacy, supporting hundreds of foreign nationals in obtaining their non-immigrant visa through permanent residency and naturalization. They have also worked in the LGBT, nonprofit, and volunteer management sector. Rowan truly feels that at the root of so many conflicts in our world is a deep unmet desire within all of us to be heard and feel validated. This brought them to seek out their MS in conflict management and resolution at the Joan B. Kroc School of Peace Studies at the University of San Diego. Through gaining skills at Kroc, they hope to help fulfill these desires and more effectively bridge the gap between both individuals and groups in order to help us move towards a more compassionate and just world. Welcome, Rowan. Next, we have Dr. Alexandra Kaloyanidis, who is a Barnard College grad from 2003, also Columbia University, summa cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa, MA, and MPhil Religious Studies, Yale University, PhD Religious Studies, Yale University, postdoctoral scholar, Ho Center for Buddhist Studies, Stanford University. Alexandra is an associate professor of religious studies at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Her book is Baptized in Burma, Religious Change at the Last Buddhist Kingdom. And it was a winner of the Claremont Prize for the Study of Religion in the Institute of Religion, Culture, and Public Life at Columbia University. Her writing has appeared in the Journal of Southeast Asian Studies, Journal of Burma Studies, Material Religion, Asian Ethnology, Journal of the American Academy of Religion, MAVCOR Journal, Journal of Global Buddhism, Sojourn, Journal of Social Issues in Southeast Asia, Church History, Religions, Tricycle, The Buddhist Review, and Marginalia Review of Books. Welcome. All right, next we have Dr. Elizabeth Iris Rivera Rodas, she and her, is an associate professor of quantitative methods and sociology of education in the Department of Educational Foundations at Montclair State University. She holds a joint PhD in economics and urban educational policy from Rutgers University, Newark, an MS in social research from Hunter College, CUNY, and a BA in economics from Barnard College, Columbia University. As an economist of education, Dr. Rivera Rodas's scholarly interests involve the economics of urban education, residential and school segregation, and the structural educational equalities by race and ethnicity. Her current research, supported by a Spencer Foundation racial equity grant, explores the relationship between high schools being in historically redlined areas and advanced mathematics course availability and the impact this has on Latinx students' course taking and mathematics achievement. Dr. Rivera Rodas also holds a doctoral research faculty status at Montclair State University and teaches across 4 of the doctoral programs. Welcome. And finally, we have Dr. Brenda Ann Wilson, class of 1981. Dr. Wilson, she and her, is currently a professor of microbiology and associate director of undergraduate education in the School of Molecular and Cellular Biology, College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, inaugural professor of biomedical and translational sciences in the Carle, Illinois College of Medicine, professor of pathobiology in the College of Veterinary Medicine, and senior faculty fellow in the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She is a fellow of the American Academy of Microbiology and a member of the AAM Selection Committee and American Society for Microbiology. Distinguished lecturer. She earned a BA degree in biochemistry and German from Barnard College. She was a DAAD graduate fellow in biochemistry at the Ludwig Maximilians University, München, Germany. As an AAUW doctoral fellow studying antibiotic biosynthesis, she earned a PhD degree in chemistry from Johns Hopkins University. She then undertook her NIH postdoctoral fellowship training in microbiology at Harvard Medical School, where she began her studies on bacterial protein toxins. Her first tenured faculty appointment was in biochemistry at Wright State University School of Medicine. Her current research work at UIUC focuses on how microbe interface, bacterial pathogens, and bacterial protein toxins, development of antitoxin and toxin-based therapeutic biologics, comparative and functional genomic technologies, and applications involving microbiomes and their roles in health and disease, climate change impacts on health and microbiomes, and development of technologies and applications for detection and risk assessment of dual use research and concern, objects, publications, and activities. Welcome, Dr. Wilson. So as you can see, we have some extremely accomplished panelists on our panel tonight. And I want to just go ahead and get started with asking our questions. So first, I'd like to direct my questions to Rowan, who is our graduate student representative. And the first one is, how did you choose the programs that you decided to apply for?
Thank you so much for asking. Well, so I sort of stumbled upon, my field is a little specific, peace studies, conflict management. And I actually stumbled upon it accidentally. It was one of those fate moments where I was looking up programs for my fiance who was thinking of doing an MFA, and we were already living in San Diego at the time. So I was looking at the graduate institutions around, and there are a couple of big name ones. And so I was on USD's website for the different masters that they offered, and I saw conflict management and resolution, and I was like, hang on a second, what is that? That sounds amazing. And so through that sort of started looking at other similar programs because it just seemed like the confluence of all of these different elements that I've been interested in. I feel like, kind of read what I wrote about in my bio. Conflict is everywhere. We're a very conflict averse society. People have a really hard time engaging in any kind of conflict, whether that's within the self, interpersonal, organizational, national, international, global, all of those conflicts. We just have a really hard time sort of hearing the other person and or the other people. And it's something that I've always felt that I was really skilled at. So I was really excited to learn more about sort of the background. I was lucky in that, you know, there were a limited number of programs that focused on such a niche field. And I was pretty confident that I wanted to stay in San Diego. Columbia does also have a conflict management and resolution program. So if anyone is interested and wants to stay in New York, that's definitely an option. So my field kind of narrowed down my focus pretty explicitly. One piece of advice that I definitely have when looking at graduate school is to take your time. I personally took, I think, 5 years between undergrad and grad school. Some people, like my sister, know exactly what they want to do from age 4. She went, you know, from undergraduate school straight to veterinary school, and that's great. But if you're, you know, someone who's a little more in the humanities side, I think it can be good to give yourself time, because I wouldn't have even known that something like peace studies or conflict management existed when I left Barnard. And it's just opened a lot of doors and helped me, you know, kind of hone in on what I want to do. So that was sort of how I, you know, initially got into the program, and then different things that I was looking at, you know, how long the program took, what the requirements were for the application. I was unemployed at the time. There were layoffs at the nonprofit that I was working at. So my timeline was, you know, a little bit faster. So I wanted to get in those applications quickly. You know, what the requirements were for the different courses that I would be taking. I really felt like if I was going to be having to take a bunch of filler classes that weren't what I was interested in, and, you know, I'm paying for this as an adult now, I'm not getting any help. And so I'm not paying for classes that, you know, I don't personally think will help me in my journey and my career. So those were a couple of the main things that I looked at.
Yeah, so you mentioned a little bit about the application. I kind of want to focus on that a little bit. Um, Starting with the letters of recommendation. So can you tell us, and you don't have to use names, but who wrote your letters of recommendation?
Yeah, so I had 2 letters of recommendation. One was from my college advisor. You definitely want to make sure that you have someone who can speak to your academic prowess and your success in your courses. This is grad school after all, so they want to know, you know, more about how you are in the classroom. And I'd had her for a couple of classes and been a TA, as well as, you know, worked with her on her research and things like that. So she was really able to speak to that. But then again, you know, because I've done a lot of things like advocacy work and activism, I was going to a peace school. I also wanted to speak a little bit to that side of myself. And so through my work at Gender Rev at Columbia, I'd done a lot of work with student life and the folks who would, you know, help me get all of these crazy events that I was trying to get up and running at school and get past the bureaucratic tape, and you know, just do a lot of that kind of advocacy work. So I had someone who could who was still within Barnard's institution and still could kind of talk about me as a college student, but talk more about all of my extracurriculars and the ways that I sort of showed up at Barnard outside of just the classroom, that, you know, resulted in them, you know, suggesting me for things like senior marshal and stuff, so they could really speak to my role as a leader in that way. So those were the 2 that I chose.
Beautiful. I kind of want to talk a little bit about the fact that you took a few years off. You were also really involved in campus. You were also thinking about all of these things that you were wanting to study. How did you approach your personal statement with these things in mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I think the you know, similarly to undergrad, the personal statement is really an opportunity to show the admissions office who you are as a person. And so there's no one right way to do it, because it is about you and what you want to show them. And, you know, because I was going into conflict management and resolution, it was sort of an opportunity for me to talk about what conflict looks like in my life. why I'm interested in that field specifically as a non-binary person, as a trans advocate. That feels incredibly crucial to my interest in conflict management. How I show up in the world and the way that I am perceived plays a really big role in why this is a field that is so important to me. And so that was my opportunity to sort of talk about, you know, my existence as conflict in many ways. And I think a lot of people of different identities can maybe relate to that, of just existing the way that I do in the world, automatically creating conflict with some people, and what that experience has felt like and how that plays into me wanting to more explicitly dive into theory and conflict resolution, both for my personal life and for my existence in the world, and for my community as a whole. So that's kind of the way that I approached that. But again, I think it really is about looking at your application as a whole. Are there any gaps? Are there any areas where you feel like there's this really important part of me that hasn't showed up in my transcript or my letters of recommendation or any of these other things? If there's something that's really missing, that definitely feels like something that's important to keep in mind. But always thinking about the why. Why is this something that's important to me? Why is this something that is crucial for my success in my career and my life, that I focus on this area of study? I think those are the right questions to be asking.
Definitely, definitely. So, from our kind of behind the scenes conversation, seems like you're from the East Coast.
Yeah,
Is that
that's
true?
right. Yeah, I'm from the Philly suburbs initially. Yeah.
Yes. So, did you do campus visits? How did San Diego lure you from the appeal of our frigid coast?
Great question. Yeah, I actually, when I was doing undergrad, I visited something like 50 colleges, maybe 60. And that was for a lot of different reasons. I'm very much a gut person, and I just felt like I can't get the vibe of this place online, or even through, online campus visits and stuff like that. And that was one of the most important things to me personally. I care about the programs and the teachers and that kind of thing, but I want to know what it feels like to put my feet on this campus. And even more so, I want to walk around and see what the people here are like. I'm a very community oriented person. That was what made me fall in love with Barnard when I applied, was coming onto campus and being like, okay, I want to be all of these people and I want all of them to be my best friend. And like that was very clear to me, that I was like, that is the sign. And that's what pushed me to apply early decision, because I hadn't felt that way on any other campus. Grad school is a little bit different, right? You're probably not going to be living on campus, depending on, what you're doing and what the school is and what options they have. It's not as much of a community focused experience a lot of the time. But that was something that I still wanted to do. So I did do my own independent visit to USD. I lived here, so that was easy enough to do. I decided to not visit the other schools that I was looking at because I felt pretty confident that I could get in, and it was definitely my top choice. So I was kind of focused on that and was like, if I don't get in, I'm not sure if I would accept other places. So I was putting most of my eggs in one basket. Fortunately, it worked out for me. Um, but yeah, I think it just comes down to what your priorities are. If it feels really important to you, like it does to me, to get a sense of, of the vibe of the people, I definitely suggest campus visits. But also, it's financially difficult to do that. It was a lot easier when I was in high school and my parents were willing to drive me all around the country and, take our spring breaks to do that. And I don't have spring breaks anymore. I have a job. That's not necessarily something that I can just take 2 weeks off to drive around the country. So if it's something that you have access to, I always think it's good information to get, but I wouldn't stress too much about it. I don't think it's as important as it is for something like undergrad.
Thank you so much. So now I'm going to turn to Hillary and ask Hillary some questions. So, as the director of admissions at the Kroc School of Peace Studies, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So admissions is the most fun job. I have the honor of speaking with prospective applicants on Zoom all day, every day. And let me tell you, it is so inspiring to talk to the future Kroc School students about their vision for the world, how they want to change and build careers with purpose. And it's the absolute best. And besides that fun part, I'm a project manager. I work with our faculty. We have many faculty on this panel today, so I manage their time in the admissions process and I help them make their decisions on applications and scholarships. And I move the application through the different systems here at the university. I think in admissions and in grad school, you deal with a lot of recruitment on the ground, talking to people. And at a peace school, I'm often educating people what a peace studies is. This is a new thing in higher ed. Kroc School is the first standalone school of peace studies in the United States. We're super proud to be a frontier there. And we're talking about what is peace studies? What do your career outcomes look like? And do our research focuses align with your interests? So I have the most amazing conversations and get to meet the most amazing people all over the world. So that's what Director of Admissions gets to do.
Wonderful. So, speaking of these people hopefully that you meet are turning into applicants, right? So, can you walk us through how you review a candidate for admission when I don't know what your notification system looks like, when that pings and there's a new application in there? Can you walk us through how you would review an application?
Sure. So at first, we do an initial sweep to make sure a candidate meets our minimum requirements. Every grad school you're applying to will have different requirements. So make sure you read those pages very carefully on their websites before you submit an application. We can always tell when somebody just shot us an application and didn't tailor it to our school. Our faculty actually make the admission decisions. I do not make those decisions because I would let everyone in, but the faculty does make the decision. So we have a rubric they follow to score a student on their undergraduate GPA, on their resume, on their letters of recommendation. If you are fresh out of your bachelor's program, I think two letters of rec from a tenure track faculty member, upper division is probably preferred. If you have several years of experience like Rowan did when they applied, then a professional and academic mix is also really welcome because we're all different people a few years out of our bachelor's program. And then one of the most important parts of the Kroc School is probably your personal statement. We do have prompts for each of our degrees to respond to. And besides, sharing your opinion or your insights on the world, it's also a writing sample. I think a lot of applicants forget that faculty are judging and critiquing your writing to make sure you're grad school ready. Because when you get to grad school, as I'm sure the panel will all attest, it is a fast pace on day one. And a program like ours in humanities, it's a very rigorous reading and writing your first semester. So the faculty want to be sure you're meeting their standards.
Perfect. So, speaking of meeting standards, I want to ask you about internal scholarships. So, does your office review applicants for internal scholarships? And if so, how can applicants make themselves more attractive for these scholarships?
We do. We are very lucky that Mrs. Joan B. Kroc, the founder of our school and the heiress to the McDonald's fortune, left us a huge endowment. So our tuition is already very low, offset by the endowment. We're the lowest graduate school for tuition at the University of San Diego. And then we have lots of scholarships based on merit. So the scholarship applications are given to admitted students after they are admitted. It's a very brief application. And then we also have a few named scholarships from additional donors to Mrs. Kroc that we ask applicants to check to see if they qualify for those. And then once you apply for scholarships, probably 2 weeks later, the scholarship committee will issue a decision and will issue the letter. So we're very lucky to have that extra money to support our students, but I can't help with cost of living in San Diego. That is the the reality we all have to live with.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. As a New Yorker, definitely. So, Rowan,
You
this is
understand?
you can attest.
Yeah, and I will add that that was a huge factor for me. You know, I was like looking at the price tag for a semester at Kroc, and I was like, you know, compared to Barnard, I was like, is that right? Like, it's that much money, and I can apply for scholarship, and the vast majority of students will receive some form of scholarship. So I am incredibly lucky to not only be able to attend this phenomenal program, but to actually be able to support myself through it, and still be able to pay my rent and cost of living because the tuition is so affordable. So it's definitely a huge thing to consider. Is not only how long do you have to be in the program and therefore potentially out of full-time work, depending on if you choose to do that at the same time, but you know, what is your cost per semester for tuition as well as the cost of living. But I was already living in San Diego and was used to New York prices, so the cost of living was something I was having to deal with no matter what. So
Thank you so much. Definitely think about the cost of living. Yes, it's not going down anywhere. So my final question to you for this portion of the questions, Hillary, is um, when an applicant has applied and they're sort of waiting for a decision, um, how can they follow up with the admissions office? What kinds of communications do admissions officers want, and what don't they want?
Yes, well, I know we all have very scary sounding titles, but most missions officers are extremely personable and outgoing because we deal with people all day. So don't be intimidated. Having said that, hopefully by the time you've applied, you've already engaged with that officer. So I really encourage you to schedule those advising sessions. We all have those on our websites. Schedule those advising sessions, engage with the schools you're really interested in early in the process. So by the time your application comes through, you're able to send a friendly little email, maybe 2 weeks, give 2 weeks after your complete application. So official transcripts, letters of rec, all of those requirements are complete, because you will not be evaluated until you've met the criteria. So maybe wait 2 weeks if you haven't heard anything and just say, you know, I think also what really helps get a response is maybe you've received offers from other universities and you're waiting on this one. So that will also put a little fire under the admissions officer's chair. But I think maybe 2 weeks after your complete application is appropriate to send a friendly email.
And anything that you don't want to receive from an applicant.
I don't want to be your automatic computer for you. You can check your own status of if an application is complete or not. So take some ownership and check that on your own. And also read all of the instructions carefully. So a lot of times we send out general emails, but it has all the instructions in there. So pay attention to that information.
Thank you so much. All right, so now I want to turn our questions to our faculty members on the panel. Um, and I guess whoever wants to answer first can answer first. So, as faculty members, can you tell us about your role in the graduate admissions process?
I'll jump in. We at my university, we have an MA program in my department, and the way that it works is that there is a graduate studies committee, so a rotating committee. So when you serve on this committee, you are involved in reviewing applications. So you should know that when you're applying, so I teach Asian religions. Sometimes I serve on this committee and sometimes I don't. So there will only be 3 faculty members who are in charge that year of reviewing and then reporting back to the larger faculty. So depending on just sort of the rotation that has nothing to do with your own interests, who are looking at this sort of group of possible students to admit, it's going to be sort of based on the distribution of labor within an academic department. So we have faculty members that review, but it's a rotating group of people. And, you know, they can think about different disciplines, sort of subfields and so on, but it's not necessarily true that the person you might be hoping to work with is actually going to read your application at the beginning.
I can chime in right now. So being more in the sciences, we have slightly different procedures. So we really pay a lot of attention to the competencies. So the original in the school that I belong to is an umbrella program. So there's multiple departments that are part of our admissions. And just as Alex said, we have a committee that actually rotates through the faculty. On that committee, we have quite a few representatives from each of the departments. Since it's a relatively large program that we have, we usually have anywhere from 40 to 60 students, incoming students, so into the program. So we do have a number of different faculty that can span most of the areas that of interest for our students. But we have an initial screen through for competencies. And then after that, it is the faculty who will then, on that committee, will rank them based on the application. And a lot of especially in the sciences, prior research experience actually plays a very significant role in whether you get your scholarships, whether you're you are they feel that you are actually ready for undertaking a PhD. So we do have actually in our school a standalone master's program, and we also have a master's combined with PhD program, where when you enter into that program, which usually is about 5 years or so, you have the first 2 years, which would be devoted to a master's degree. Once you've passed your qualifying examinations to advance to the PhD, you get your master's, and then you are automatically into your PhD program. But we try to judge whether you're actually at that stage or not, if that is something that you can. But we do take in consideration where you come from. So if you're from a small college, which you do not have a lot of resources to get a lot of research experience, then we rely on other factors and other types of things. What did you do during the summertime? What did you do in terms of advanced labs that you might have taken? Things like that would actually help prepare you to better transition into a laboratory for our the research experimentation aspects of what we do. So, but it's not a limiting factor, but it certainly plays a role. And those are things that we can also, students oftentimes might, contact us and ask us about these things. And so we will ask them, and if you tell us what your experience is, we will make some suggestions about how you might actually bolster this in many ways. And then there are some that we just recommend that you actually just go out there and maybe do an internship or something during the summertime. And there are internship programs that are designed especially for undergraduates to undertake during summers. And we recommend that they do those types of activities so that they can at least have some experience with what it's like to be in a research lab. But again, after that, then the selection committee will then actually, we will bring in those candidates that rank to the top, that are all the way at the top. We don't offer them a position just yet, because we actually wait until we actually bring them to campus. So we actually do pay for them to come here for the interviews, so that they can actually usually it's a weekend where they come in on a Friday and they usually leave Sunday morning. But all day Saturday is getting to know faculty, getting to know the students here, getting a tour of the place. We have social activities. And it depends on your specialty too, because since in our school we have 4 departments, so on the Friday we'll bring them in to have a big giant meeting with everyone, so that they can just see who all is there, and then on Saturday, we have individual talks with faculty, and the students can sign up for the area of interest that what they're interested in. So this is all done behind the scenes by the coordinators, that they will ask the student what area are you interested in? Do you have any particular faculty that you would really like to meet? And they will, you know, try to give you priority as much as possible to meet with people that you're interested in. And then there's also all the social activities allow for students to come up to faculty and also talk with them while they're there. We have a poster session where many faculty will, especially faculty who are accepting students into their laboratories, they will have a current student present a poster so that they can talk with the current graduate students and things. And then they also have lunches with the students, and then usually on Friday evening, there will be special dinners for, again, you select one of the departments to have a dinner with the department people. And then the graduate students usually take them out for some social activity somewhere in town or something. But those are kind of, and at that point, that interaction, talking with them, you're essentially, if you're asked to come, then that means you're very close to getting the offer. But you know, if it has happened where, you know, the person comes here and is not a good fit, doesn't interact very well with folks, you know, kind of basically messes up their interview, if you will. And there's a few of them that we don't make an offer to, but usually most of them we do. And so and then it's all up to the student, you know, and if they have particular faculties or labs or interests that they have, they should make that known and make sure that it's in the personal statement. So in our cases, our personal statements are not just about who you are, and that's actually an important part. I would say it's about a third. If you divide it up into, you know, one page, the top third should be trying to explain who you are, what you are trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, what's your goal in life, that sort of thing. The second one is, how have you prepared yourself for that already? And talking about the research you've done, talking about the activities that you've done in whatever, you know, areas of interest that you have. And then the final part is actually identifying what direction you want to go in and why you want to work for certain individuals or certain topics or certain areas, and that's your career goal and why that's your career goal and how this particular, you know, university is going to actually help you achieve that. And I think tailoring each one of those personal statements to the institution that you are interested in going to is really important for this. Boilerplate, you know, general personal statements, we, you know, as folks on the admissions committees, we can sniff that out really fast. It's very easy for us to tell when it's a boilerplate that they've used for lots of different places, as opposed to where you've tailored it for the place where you're actually really wanting to go. And it serves a very large role in all of this. We also pay a big attention to the recommendation letters. So we actually usually would like to have more than just 2. We usually go for about 3 recommendation letters, and it's very clear on the application that that's what we're asking for. And one, we want it from someone who's an academic advisor or someone who knows you really well in terms of your courses. One who actually can talk about any of your extracurricular, any of your other types of other areas like your, student organizations or other volunteer things that you've done. And then we want one from your advisor. If you have any kind of research experience in somebody's lab or in some arena or internship program or anything along those lines, we'd like to have something from that individual so that they can actually talk about your research potential. Okay, and so we pay really a lot of attention to those 2 sort of factors, and it really makes a big difference to us in terms of a student that can stand out, where they clearly have tailored their application for us.
Yeah, it sounds like you, Dr. Wilson, have you're pretty involved with the process, kind of from start to finish. You're, reviewing the application, you're interacting with the applicant during the interviews, and you're helping to make the final decision. Dr. Rivera Rodas, is it the same for you? Are you like as actively on the committee? And I guess, are there any differences between how admissions works at Montclair versus at UNC Charlotte and at UICI, right?
UIUC. Yeah,
Yes.
University of Illinois.
Yes.
We're a whole system.
There are slight differences and some similarities. So our students, I do participate in the committees most of the time, not all the time. We do try to make sure that we rotate through the faculty so that it's equitable between all of us and services divided equally. But the times that I am involved, I have reviewed applications. So we do look at the application holistically. Because we're a doctoral program, we don't necessarily put a lot of weight on the GREs as much as we would the actual experience of a person. So it depends on programs. So we look at, we're going to look at your scores if you send them, but it's not the only thing that we look at. We don't have a cutoff point. We look at the personal statement. We want to see how aligned your vision for what your doctoral program looks like according to our program as well. So we want to make sure that you're just not coming in a year you feel like you shouldn't be there anymore. And then we also want to make sure that there's a faculty member that could work with you. And that's the really important part, because throughout the PhD, you want to make sure that someone is moving through that program. And it might not necessarily be someone who's on the committee, but it should be a faculty member that's in that program or involved in the program. So we look at all of that. And once we have a short list, similar to what Brenda mentioned, we do bring people to campus, we do interviews, and we talk to people. And mainly it is, if you got an interview, it's kind of a done deal unless you kind of blow it. Because we're really interested in the people that we are bringing. Like it's a bunch of resources that we have to spend on all of that. So when we bring them in, we do an interview, we see what sort of courses they're interested in, what they're interested in afterwards, because not everyone who applies for a PhD actually should get a PhD or needs a PhD. So we want to make sure that that's clear before you start paying for or start investing your time in the program. So making sure that that's really clear and aligned, and thinking through ways of who they could work with and how fleshed out their like thought processes behind it. So like, are you coming in with a clear research agenda? Do you know what you're actually thinking about looking at? Or are you just like, I want to study education? That's two very different things. And that latter one is something that we definitely would, that's when you blow it and we send you back home. So that's essentially the process. And then after that, we do have some scholarships. We do for doctoral programs, for the most part across the country, you do normally get funded. There's either full funding with a stipend, or there's partial funding. It depends if you have to go full-time for the full, at least in all the programs I've ever heard of, you have to be full-time to get full funding and a stipend. But Montclair, we do have partial funding for people who do work because of the area that we're in and who we serve as educators, because we have a lot of principals and teachers, and it's really not, it's not feasible for someone to stop teaching for 5 years and and have a PhD. So there's some similarities, and in some cases there's not. In the sciences, you definitely do need to pinpoint who you're working with. And I think in the social sciences, it's a little different. You can switch advisors in the middle if your research changes. I'm not going to speak about anymore about the sciences, the hard sciences, because I don't know if you can switch between advisors if you're in a lab and things like that. There's also a few professors who have their own labs and their own like pots, like grant money that they bring in their own people. So that's also something that if you're looking at programs, look at the centers and who has doctoral students, because those people have way more resources to bring people onto campus than maybe like an assistant professor who has no grant money and no one to, like, no funding to help bring you to campus.
Thank you so much. So everybody has been giving like the juiciest answers to all of these questions. And I want to make sure that we have enough time for Q&A from the audience. But I have one more question, which is why are some reasons why an applicant might not get admitted? And if they don't get admitted, what are some tips that you have for them if they're reapplying? And then like really quick answers.
I'll just jump in and underscore what my other panelists have said about tailoring your letter to the faculty that you're likely to work with. We also see things that seem like form letters, and the truth is, especially in the humanities, it really is so much about those personal relationships, and to spend some time looking at who you might work with, even if you're looking at multiple programs, but to at least sort of take the imaginative act within that letter to say, if I were to work with Professor so-and-so, I would do these kinds of things. It really helps the committee kind of imagine you already in that work. And so to really tailor it to not just the program or the institution, but to actual specific faculty members, I think is really important.
If your
I would agree
GPA
with
is
that.
even just like 1 point above the grad school's minimum requirement, the faculty are going to look at your application much more closer. So if your GPA is not well above the minimum requirement, I suggest talking to the admissions officer and adding a supplemental document explaining your undergraduate GPA or your graduate, whatever you're applying for, and that you're ready for this next level of education. Otherwise, that is one reason why many students do get rejected who otherwise would have qualified. It's just they didn't seem like they were ready for that rigorous level.
Yeah, I was just going to add everything that Alex said and Hillary said. In terms of the GPA, really what we worry about is, can the student actually handle the more advanced courses, which are much more critical thinking, problem solving, a lot more thought process that has to go into it. And sometimes if your GPA is very low, it indicates that you struggle with those kinds of skill sets, and that one thing that you can do to improve is to actually then maybe take some, even for non-degree, you could take some non-degree courses that would actually help fulfill some of that and demonstrate that you have taken some 400, 500 level, grad level type of courses, and that you've succeeded in those. That is a excellent way to do that sort of thing. There are post-baccalaureate programs that can contribute to this sort of thing. Most of those are only for about a year or a year and a half or so. Or even you can do a course-based master's degree program that is usually, again, about a year and a half to 2 years. You can get that, and that will bolster whatever you have already in play, and demonstrate that you can handle the graduate level curriculum that is necessary. I also would say that one of the areas that oftentimes it's a big ding is if it looks like your application's been put together very sloppily. So, and I'm surprised that we see this, but where there's typos and the grammar is terrible, and it looks like it's almost like they spent a lot of time on one paragraph, and then the other paragraph who knows how they came about writing it. It's just it's not always consistent, and part of that is, I think, they go away, they work on it, and then they come back, and they and it's not where they've spent a great deal of time writing it and thinking about it. And so when you see an application that is not carefully put together, it indicates that you're not going to be a very careful person. And in our case, in science, that is a really big factor. You got to be careful in the lab. You got to be careful about your experiments that you're doing, about the way you do your research. And if that's not there, and those indicators are not there, then we worry about the ability of the student to be successful. And as Elizabeth was mentioning, the students, when they come for the interviews here, one of the big factors that will knock them out of the running is if they're obnoxious and are not friendly and kind to the other students and to the graduate students and even to the faculty. We have had students come through that really did not treat other students in a nice, kind fashion. And we don't really like to see students who can't get along with others. And so and we've had students where we just said, oh my gosh, this person just didn't know how to have manners, you know? And so I think that those are things that will detract.
Thank you. So very quickly, are there any questions from the audience? Feel free to unmute yourself. Go ahead, Ellis.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. So I'm a junior at Barnard. I'm studying cellular biology, minoring in chemistry. And I've been applying for different summer internship programs. And I'm curious if doing a summer research program at a certain school later helps your application if you try to apply there for grad school, or if that's just something that's not actually really considered.
I guess I'm best qualified to answer that. I would say that any research experience is going to be incredibly valuable. And if it's at the same place, that's good too, because you can take the opportunity of while you're there to actually start to get to meet some people. And I would go and take that, use that as a way of networking, of getting to know other students that are there, and it's not going to necessarily, you might not meet the people who are going to be on the graduate admissions committee, but what you will do is you will be meeting people who are going to be doing some of the interviews and some of the social activities, and they will remember you. We have many students who fall into that category, and anytime that there's a pleasantness about, oh, very industrious person, oh, very hardworking, oh, very nice and cordial person, or very interesting work that they do, anytime that you have those kinds of things that are connected with you, I think is a very big positive thing. You can do it with or elsewhere. I don't think that's not the factor. The factor is actually trying to give as good an impression to people as possible. And when you do your internship program, make sure that you have some folks that write letters for you.
Oh, okay, that's good news. Thank you for explaining that.
Thank you. Do we have, oh, Isabella, yes, go ahead.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank all of the panelists for their incredible insight. All of this has been very helpful. So I'm a humanities student, specifically in Hispanic studies, and part of the requirements for applying to those types of PhD programs are writing samples. So I'm wondering if anyone could lend some insight into selecting writing samples, what sort of thing that I apologize. It is 1 a.m. in Barcelona right now. I'm tuning in from there. I'm studying abroad, and my English is kind of lost. But anyway, any sort of themes that I should select in connecting the writing sample to my overall research interests.
I'll jump in from the humanities point of view. And also, it's so great that you're doing this from Barcelona at a very late hour. One thing is, I would really find a piece of writing that you feel like shows your skills as a writer, and not worry so much that it's directly related to your research agenda. That's one thing in the humanities that might be a little different from other disciplines, is that we know and almost want people to come in with more questions than answers about what they're going to study. And it's the same is true when you write your personal statement. You're going to sort of, it's almost like you're going to fake it till you make it. You're going to pretend you have a very clear question and you have something that you want to do that shows us that you know how to ask questions and that you have exciting avenues for answering those questions. but very rarely do we really hold anyone to that. And so really it's about the sort of process and the kind of competencies and skills you have that we're looking for, rather than matching up exactly the content of what you're writing about with what you might do your PhD in. So to give yourself permission to share work that you think really showcases a certain kind of skill as a writer and as a thinker, and not worry so much, I think, for many programs, about matching that to sort of what you're going to be as a future scholar, if that's helpful.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much. And may I ask a follow-up question that's tangentially related? For more cultural area studies subjects, a lot of professors are, at least in my case, like English is not the language of choice. It's not the language of scholarship for them. How do I navigate that space if I say want to ask a professor from the University of Barcelona to write a letter? Like, how do I coordinate that, and how do graduate programs see that?
I definitely think language skills are becoming even more and more important in humanities. And I would ask, so you don't know the readers, depending on your application, but if you are expecting that the readers are going to be reading in English, you would still ask the writer if they would be willing to write for you, if they'd be willing to submit a letter, say, in Spanish, but if they could also have it translated to send it in, and then maybe send 2 versions of that. Also, there will be committees that themselves will accept non-English language. You have to look at the program. And many, I think, are increasingly open to non-English letters, but so many writers, and this is also something, this might be the last thing I get to say, so you should just ask people for letters. I get asked for letters all the time, sometimes from students who have never spoken in class. And one thing I did not know as a Barnard student was how willing people are to write you letters. And so to just really feel the confidence that you can ask people for letters and should ask people for letters. And then you can work out some of these technicalities like sort of later.
Okay, thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us, Isabella. I know that this is a huge sacrifice for you to be up this late. So thank you. And thank you for staying till the end. I know we are a little bit over, but I want to give the panel, if you had just one final quick word to say to Barnard students or alums that are thinking about applying to graduate school, what would they what would you say to them? I'm going to go to Dr. Rivera Rodas first, and then maybe Hillary, and then Rowan, if you're still here, and then Dr. Kalionidis, and then Dr. Wilson.
I would encourage all of you to reach out to faculty members who you're thinking about working with, because even if we're not on the committee that year, we will talk to our colleagues and make sure that your application is looked at thoroughly if we think that you're a good fit for the program. And a lot of life is just knowing people where they're at, right? Also talk to your Barnard faculty members. They might know some of us, they might know someone in your field that you need to meet with, and academia is very, very small. So if I know most people who study the same thing that I do across the country. So if someone was to say, I have this amazing undergraduate student who's thinking about your program, I would seriously consider looking at their application.
I would just leave you with engage with the admissions officers as much as you can. Ask to speak with current students. Ask to speak with the department chair or faculty. I know the Kroc School are, for qualified candidates, our faculty are very eager to engage with prospective applicants, and ask to speak with alumni too, to talk about career outcomes. I think, most grad schools, we want students who want to be here, and we want students who align with our research areas as well. So having those conversations before you submit an application is really important.
Was I next? Yes. Okay, great. Don't go to grad school immediately after undergrad because you're scared of what to do next in your life and you don't want to have to apply to jobs. Don't do that. It's a lot of money And it's a lot of work. And I know a lot of people who just applied to grad school their senior year because they were like, I've never not been in school before and I don't know what to do with my life. So I'm just going to go to grad school. Unless there is a specific purpose to getting that degree, meaning like you know what specific job you want to go into and it requires a master's or a PhD, or if you really feel like there's a gap in your learning or something along those lines, or you have a very specific trajectory, those are all good reasons to go to grad school. Don't just go because you're scared of the unknown. Take your time, take a couple of years if you need to, and then see where your trajectory is going. The worst thing that can happen is for you to go to grad school, spend several $1,000s and several years of your life learning about a topic that you actually won't end up using in your career because you were hasty. So take your time. And for me personally, you know, I think doing something that can have multiple applications is great. So what I love about, you know, things like gender studies or conflict management and resolution is I can pick 500 different careers that I could use that field of study in. So unless you have a really specific direction, considering doing a grad program that you could use those skills regardless of what direction your career goes in is a much safer bet than pigeonholing yourself into one specific area.
I'll just jump in. Rowan already said exactly what I was going to say, is that consider taking some time, like both think about it if you're going to do it next year, the following year. I took 6 years off and it wasn't just a good way to make sure. It was also, I got some skills that I had friends that went straight through who were awkward about replying to emails, who just didn't know how to interact as like a grown-up in a space, you know, and make a cup of coffee. I mean, there was just some things that you learn in the workforce. So sometimes you feel like you just have to keep going and you've been so good at school, but no matter what it is, some time in between can be really helpful. And even I was talking to my mom on the way here and she was like, Alex, tell them they need to take a break. So I don't know if you want to take my mom's advice, but I did. And I don't regret it. And you know, it doesn't have to be a lot of time, but some time of a break can be really helpful.
Right. I would say ditto to all the above. Those are all great comments. And I would just also think that you think about your prep for what you're going to do and try to be as flexible as you can. There are so many students who get entered into the program and then realize this is not really what they want. But then they have to then do a catch up to find what they need to be able to switch gears into another direction, and having a little bit of flexibility, making sure you take advantage of your undergrad career to actually, I mean, so many students want to finish in 3 years. And I think that that's actually kind of sometimes a mistake. I know that they want to do this because there's economic reasons and all other many personal other reasons, but I think that actually taking advantage of the full 4 years so that you can make sure that you have the good, strong foundation and many of the things that would then allow you to switch if you need to change direction. And the perfect time to do that is actually in the bachelor's, in your bachelor's degree. And especially if you're going into the sciences where you need to have that extra research experience and other types of background experience that would actually contribute to your competitiveness in the future graduate programs. So try to be flexible. I think that is a on top of all the other things that everyone said. I would add that.
Well, Rowan's cat has entered the chat, so I think that means it is a great time for us to say goodnight and say thank you so much to our panelists. I truly appreciate these words, and yeah, thank you. Good night.